How's it going, everyone? It's me, Mugen. We're back again with some more Berserk ending theories, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm really salty right now, just because I've already recorded this video, but like a really smart individual, forgot to turn on my microphone. So, pro tip, make sure you have microphone recording, otherwise you have nothing. You have to do the entire video again. From a video I made a month and a half ago, has a lot of comments talking about their theories, and a lot of them are new and interesting. So I thought, why not go through, talk about them, see if there's some golden nuggets to be found in the deep minds of YouTube comments and TikTok comments. TikTok, apparently a huge place for Berserk, by the way. Really didn't know that. Before we jump into it, of course, spoilers. If you haven't read Berserk, don't know why you clicked on this video if you haven't. But now that's out of the way, let's get into it. Let's talk about some theories. So some of these are in reference to theories I've already talked about in my how readers think Berserk will end video, right? And some of them are in reference to other theories, so we'll compound them and I'll give some context, etc, etc, etc. The ending with Guts retelling his story to Teresa is really cool, especially if Guts tells her the phrase Godo told him, hate is a place where someone who can't stand sadness goes. This theory might come up again and then because it's my personal favorite theory of how Berserk should end, where Teresa is a character who comes and finds Guts later, having lived a nice quiet life, either with Casca, with children, with not, who knows, but he's alive and he doesn't fight anymore, and she comes to tell him that she's been trying to find him so that she can finally pay him back for destroying her life and killing the Count Slug. To which he of course tells her his life story and says, if you wish to kill me, I won't stop you, you deserve it, but hate is a place where someone who can't stand sadness goes. She looks down at her sword, that's the ending of the story. Very nice, I'm butchering it, but I love it. I think Griffith will ultimately die, but Guts won't kill him. Griffith and Guts will fight in order to protect Casca and the fairy, since this is the closest place Guts has had to home. After defeating Griffith, he'll refuse to kill him, since that would be killing his own son. Griffith will run away and be confronted by the God Hand, who will kill him for being so weak and human-like. After sacrificing everything he loved for power, Griffith will ultimately be undone by the struggler, the one man whose attention and approval he really wanted and whose happiness he fought so hard to stop. Skull Knight will continue to fight against the now weakened God Hand, but we won't see the outcome. Guts, Casca and gang live simple life in Fairy. Feldo here thinks that's a bit sugar-coated. To Zodiac, I would say it's a pretty good theory. It is very sugar-coated at the end for everyone Guts, but I think in reference to Griffith, this is a really good ending. And I'll repeat again this later because there are some theories specifically that talk about this. Griffith is someone who needs an ending that is his comeuppance, and it's more than just death. It's something else completely different. Death is the easiest punishment to give that guy, and I think it's not really one that gives you an emotional impact as much as it gives you just a cathartic release, and I think that's just too easy, and it's so not Miura, you know what I mean? I do think it is a bit sugar-coated, but I'll touch on that kind of Griffith thing near the end. Just curious about the bit where people say Miura wanted a happy ending. Has he said that at some point? Inference from the trajectory of the story. I don't disagree with the character development, suggests that as a strong possibility, but Berserk has had a lot of twists and turns, and the reality is we have no idea what Miura would have wanted. This goes in reference to people talking about very, very dark endings, because Miura-san said, I believe it was in the Berserk official guidebook, and it was the last interview he did before he passed away, rest in peace. He said that Berserk wanted Berserk to have an uplifting happy ending, or a bittersweet ending. It was something along those lines, that it wasn't as dark as what everyone thought it was going to be. It was going to be like another Eclipse ending, right? Where everyone died and everyone lost everything, right? And again, Jamie Joe here kind of sums up pretty well. After all the horrible things that have happened in Berserk, I wouldn't give it an unhappy ending. I think it was, again, something along those lines. I don't really have an ideal ending, but Guts teaming up with Griffith is something I would want to see for multiple reasons. The God Hand are so obscenely powerful that I can't see Guts even coming close to defeating them, especially in the state he's in now. The only way I could see the gang beating God Hand would be with the help of someone as powerful as them. And the only person I can think of that's the powerful would be a God Hand member. For the entire story, Guts has been working to let go of his hate, so it makes sense for him to kill Griffith anyway, but without an antagonist, the story doesn't really have any mean places to go. So I think having Griffith defy the God Hand and help Guts defeat them would be a good direction to take the story. I agree with this one, and I think it's very realistic. I think out of a lot of them, it's very realistic. Having Griffith fight the God Hand for whatever means, he realizes that the dream of having a kingdom isn't at the top. It's in fact being the top of the God Hand, defeating Void, creating his own God Hand. Maybe that's the dream, to climb higher and higher and higher. His ambition probably means no bounds, so of course he wants to go above and beyond just being the king of Midland. He wants to be the ruler ruler of evil. And so maybe he cuts a deal with Guts. And that's something that I think is very, very possible, of course, because Griffith is Moonlight Boy. He probably wants to be rid of this humanity. Perhaps he makes a deal saying, if we defeat the God Hand, we can separate my body from this child and you're able to have him. And also we can get rid of the brands on your necks. Everyone lives happily ever after. It becomes this thing where Guts begrudgingly has to work with Griffith again. I'd really love for Guts to be able to be put in that position where he knows he has to do this for Casca and for the child that was his. Charlotte would never betray Griffith. Even if she knew what Griffith did, that goes against everything that has been written / shown about her. This is something I kind of disagree with. As you can see, I say, how so? A different guy responds, I think instead her fate is to end up like Casca after learning the truth of her dream. Saver isn't who he actually is, and just like Casca is preyed upon, but unlike Casca, there's no one to save her. I do see the possibility of Charlotte just becoming another version of Casca. It goes back to the whole kind of love triangle between Charlotte, Casca, Griffith, and all that sort of stuff. I do think it's something that comes up a lot when I think of Princess Charlotte as a character. And the reason I said how so to this one, because in my mind, Charlotte is a 50-50 kind of character in the context of the story. There's another theory that talks about she will learn what Griffith did, find Guts' Bayonet through some circumstance, and then activate it, whether or not to sacrifice Griffith or someone close to her to be as powerful enough to fight him and get revenge. Or it's another thing where she breaks down and she tries to help the Black Swordsman party because she knows how awful Griffith is. Or she tries to deny it for so long but slowly starts to realize that the person I'm in love with is an awful person and is in so many ways so much like her late father, who was an incestuous rapist. Griffith not so much in one of those ones, but still, yeah, pretty bad. So she would probably have that previous context to realize what he did and be like, he is no different from the father I tried to run away from. I was the one praying for him to save me, but he is no different from my own father. So she'd either feel so guilty that she would eventually break and help the Black Swordsman party and try and do some espionage stuff, or she would just double down, be like, he's done bad stuff, but it's all for the good of the kingdom. We're not going back to the old awful ways of Midland, the plague, all of that was awful. He made everything better, and then of course becomes so psychotic to the point where she's willing to like kill or sacrifice people close to her just so that the Black Swordsman party can't get to Griffith or achieve their goals. That's something that I really think are one of the two great possibilities with Charlotte. Anyway, let's move on. Also, this is a really good one. I've read this entire one. This is a very long one, and it's actually pretty good. I like how it ends at the, I don't know how to continue from here, honestly, but a lot of it does actually make you really think a lot of the endless possibilities of what could happen with the Berserk story. And this person has made a really good effort writing all this down, I gotta say. See, these guys have good reviews, really cool. That's really good. Believe my preferred ending would be Guts' party staying at the Elf Island. It's a safe place where my boy Guts can finally find peace and happiness. Yes, we'd love for Guts to kill Griffith, but Griffith is on another power level entirely. We would need some serious shenanigans for Guts to even attempt such a feat. And besides, he already got Casca back, has friends and a good place to stay. Why would he risk that knowing he's losing his edge, just like the last chapter showed us? I know that my ending is ignoring some major plot points like whatever Griffith is going to do now, whatever the nobles that don't like Griffith are going to do, whatever our favorite boy Rickett is going to do, Kushans, the fact since the party got into the island they've received some power-ups, perhaps to get on the level of the next journey. Then again, why bother with all the grudges when you nearly have a perfect life? A lot of this has just spawned discussion of course, plot points that were forgotten about. This just brings up a lot of discussion threads talking about what it is it would need to kill Griffith, of course, power-ups, and then also just the plot points of the only thing that would really stop him from going out and essentially staying in that life on Elfhelm and just living is the fact that Casca still can't look at him, and the Moon Boy will visit but still doesn't have his own body, and Griffith will continue to inherit and share the same body as him. So that kind of works in this realm of, well, there's so much still left undone that I don't think it would be a perfect life at all. They still don't have that child that can keep. Guts still can't look at Casca. Casca can't look at him, etc. I do think that it is very interesting to just think of what if it just really ended there and just stayed that kind of way, right? I like the idea of Guts losing the ability to fight after his final fight with Griffith because of the Berserker armor taking its toll. That is cool, and I think that would have to be the essential final battle. The Berserker armor takes such a toll that he can no longer pick up a sword of his own free will without the armor on, because he's already kind of at that point in the latest chapter. He can't throw a knife as well as he used to. He can't swing the sword without it falling out of his hands. It would lead you to believe that he's fought so much with that armor that to fight on his own without it would be so pointless, right? And I like that because that just kind of evokes the idea that eventually he needs to put away the sword, and that can be part of that ending. Honestly, I feel like it's going to end on somewhat of a cliffhanger, not a direct one, but more like it could continue, which is basically what's it now. I can also see the possibility of an ending where it just kind of goes fade to black, right? It's similar to like Devilman ending or a Coen Brothers ending. Like if you look at like No Country for Old Men, it's just cuts to black, and then some other movies just fade to black after a huge moment where you're like, you're gonna leave it there. Okay, that says something if you leave it there. Little crackpot theory I had. The Baelit Guts carries will be used by Princess Charlotte. Her ambitions were to crumble once one of two things happen. Griffith dies, or Griffith, now vulnerable to his emotions due to the Moonlight Child, could send him into doing rash choices once more, thus leading to her discovering his true self. She would only realize that the man she married is just like her father. Yeah, this is what I was talking about earlier with her realizing the truth, and then of course going the 50-50 route of like, okay, either doubling down, staying with him, or going ham and doing one of two things, bail it or help. I do think that has a lot of value because Princess Charlotte isn't an insignificant character. She has a lot of sway being the princess of the King of Midland. Just because he's no longer around doesn't mean that people don't actually have merit for her. The whole reason Griffith is able to be the leader of Falconia is not only because he helped save the world, but also because the politicians believed that was him because Princess Charlotte was with him. He still needs her for his ends. Thank you. Compelling discussion. Excellent delivery on your promise. Oh, thanks, sir. Appreciate that. The problem with some of these Guts puts away his sword endings is relative to the brand of sacrifice. He doesn't have a choice except to kill demons every night so long as he has the brand, unless he never leaves Elfhelm or finds a way to remove the brand, which I think is impossible unless Griffith dies. This spawned a thread that I do think is very interesting because it talks about whether or not if he kills Griffith, it gets rid of the brand, or if he kills Void, it gets rid of the brand. Because Void made the brands, but Griffith is the one who chose them to be branded. We don't know because no one's ever done that where they were able to get rid of the brand. It always stays on them. Skull Knight would be the only other case of trying to figure out, unless he doesn't have a brand still, if he does have it on him, does he continuously just run away? Like, what are the things about him that make it possible that he can actually get rid of the brand? And I think that leads back more into the other theory we read before of how Guts and Griffith need to team up. Defeating the God Hand could get rid of the brand. It's also one of the other things that Griffith is promising. The real question is, why would Griffith choose Guts to help him fight the God Hand? It could be this indomitable will. It could be something about him that he has. It could be the Berserk armor, because the Berserk armor is unlike Apostles. Apostles are people still. They feel pain and they give up and they cry and they lose and they despair. But in the Berserk armor, you're unstoppable. I don't know how, but no doubt in my mind, Guts would beat and kill Griffith. I have faith in Guts. Hope Griffith becomes a human again and has a fight with Guts and loses, and Guts just ignores him. I think that is definitely a huge possibility, especially if they were to fight. If we go with either them not working together or working together, fighting is probably going to be inevitable, especially if Zod is kind of out of the way or he's indisposed. I think a good ending is Guts and Casca living together, as well as the Moonlight Boy giving Guts the life he needs. I think that's definitely something I want, but it's really too happy. I am on the bandwagon of there needs to be a happy ending, but it can't be too happy. It needs to be poignant to the theme of the story of this ending, evokes the theme, gives the character what they need, but it also shows with Berserk that the life of humans isn't as simple as get happy ending. It's trying to achieve the ending that you want. You may not get it perfect, or you may not get it the first time. Go through all that shit, you might actually get it. This guy commented he's reading Conviction Arc. No idea what's going later, but I'm guessing both forces will clash and they will both end up dying. Interesting to have both end up dying. I guess it would kind of cleanse everything, and then humans will just go back to doing their old thing. If the manga continues, I would like the ending to be Guts dying alongside Griffith while rethinking about all the thing that has happened in his life up until this moment. I think that'd be cool, especially like Guts dying isn't an impossibility, and it kind of makes sense because it's the journey along the way, as long as it makes it poignant to the fact that the life he had created the person he wanted to be, right? For anyone wishing for a happy ending is the least to happen. There is just so much history between Guts and Griffith. My theory is that Guts becomes an undead knight like Skull Knight. That is a possibility, but I think Guts has made things happen to the point where he knows that he could end up like Skull Knight if he travels down this certain road. Oh, that's a big theory. I'm not reading all that, sorry sir. Here's my ending. Now that Casca is back and safe, Guts will finally be at peace, but Guts will travel around with Skull Knight, and little by little he'll learn how to control Berserk armor without Shirke, and one day when Griffith and Guts will fight for the last time, it will be in hell or someplace like Eclipse, where Guts' rage will take over him and go full berserk in his armor. He will kill Griffith and lose himself in the process. Left alone in hell, he will be the place Griffith chose for Guts to die, and Guts will be a berserker in hell, killing everything he sees until he dies, kind of like Doom Guy. I'm not on the bandwagon of Griffith will die and Guts needs to kill Griffith, but if it were to happen, this seems like the real equal thing to come out of that. Guts killing Griffith would then sacrifice all the things that Mura's been trying to say, or sacrifice the things that Guts has actually been trying to achieve for himself, only for it to all just be destroyed. So his punishment will be in this place of just constant fighting, because by killing Griffith, you're basically saying that I will kill and fight as much as I want to, right? So he'll be this berserker in hell, like in Valhalla, just continuously fighting. But of course, in this one, he'll keep going until he just fades to nothingness and like this empty void. And that to me kind of does symbolize Guts now, where he's on this path of endless violence and endless void that if he doesn't get out of it, he can never achieve or become the person he wants to be and find peace in the world that is trying to show him places to be and the people to cherish, right? That one seems more realistic if it were to go down that route. I'm just gonna say one thing. Berserk was inspired by Devilman, and if you read Devilman, then you know how it ended. Devilman definitely, in so many ways, inspired Berserk. Heaps of ways. But as someone who read it and has watched like the Netflix anime, to go down that road of having that kind of very ambiguous, really, really dark ending, spoiler, everything being destroyed, the entire world being destroyed, it is a very dark road to go. But I don't think that will happen, just because they're so good in life that Guts is trying to fight for. And it's not the same in terms of the Devilman, because Guts has the will to take on all this stuff along with others. They've shown that they can achieve so much together. Devilman is a story of things just getting worse. But for Guts, it's the story of things are getting worse. Things are getting pretty good. Things are getting worse again. Worse. Things are getting pretty good. Actually, they're doing really well. Things are getting kind of bad, but hey, they're still getting good. That's just life. And I think that's what is great about Berserk. It kind of shows it in a dark fantasy setting. It doesn't have to be like Devilman, where it's like, it's socio-political themes, religious themes, all this stuff just put together to just tell this very dark story, and in a way a very non-hopeful story. You can take that and put a positive spin on it. You really could. All right, that's a lot of the YouTube comments. Let's look at the TikTok ones, because I don't know if anyone else knows, but TikTok is actually huge for Berserk fans. So if you didn't know that, go check it out. This is a thread that I saw before, and I actually think it's kind of funny and interesting at the same time. If anyone thinks that Guts killing Griffith would be a good ending, then they never understood the purpose of the story and Guts' journey. And what point was made? The revenge brings nothing but pain. It slowly destroys you and everyone around you. Who cares? What's your solution to the Griffith problem? There's no solution to it. The only person who knows who Griffith truly is Guts. Everyone else seems to as a hero and a savior. I agree with the SK army. I'm sorry, Uncle Peter, that's just how I feel. But I love the context of this discussion, because it reminds me very much of a political discussion between like a bunch of politicians, where people are saying like people thinking Guts killing Griffith would solve all the problems. It's not true. It's not simple as that, all right? It's a complex issue. We need to work on this. And then Uncle Peter, politicians like, and what point was made about all this? And it's like, this is the point, and we should recognize that. It's like, who cares about recognizing the Griffith problem? What are you going to do about it? Griffith's still killing people. Who's going to stop him? And he's like, no, there's no solution to it. That's too complex. We need to think about reintegrating society. We need to think about rebuilding society on a new level so that new Griffiths can't be made. It's like, you're forgetting that Griffith's still a problem. Who's going to fix him? We have to get rid of this Griffith problem. It's like, no, it's not that simple. Like, they're talking about it like it's climate change or like the new youth, you know? It's like, what's your solution to the Griffith problem? It's like, it's not that simple. It's like, you got to come up with a solution. Griffith's still out there doing stuff. What's the solution? He's still a bad guy. We got to kill him. It's like they're talking about Osama bin Laden when he was alive. It's like, he's still out there. What's your solution? It's like, we can't find him. It probably won't change much. What's your solution? We got to go find that dude. It's just so bizarre that it would happened in this thread. And I, of course, was like, spitting bars, bro. I think from the ending, the story would lead up to a final clash between Griffith and Guts. Guts ends up winning, but doesn't kill Griffith, and then goes and lives with his new family, leaves his sword at the sword graveyard. This is something that I definitely agree with, as you can see by the heart. Leaving his sword at the sword graveyard implies that he is dead, but he's not dead in the sense that he is well, dead. It's more his fighting spirit is gone, so he doesn't need it anymore, so it can rest with all the other swords, right? But this, of course, didn't end so easily. The thread continued. Guts won't win. To begin with, Femto is on another level of powerful. Next person says they could find a way to nerf Griffith, or maybe he gives up his god status for one reason or another. Or they buff the shit out of Guts, make the Berserk armor have some crazy hidden ability, release when Guts sees Griffith again. Now, this led to people then criticizing theories, which happens a lot in not just Berserk, just every other kind of, fan base of theorizing, right? This guy says, I thank God you aren't one of the riders. To which, I understand the criticism of saying that, but hear me out. Let's look at this from the perspective of someone who studied creative writing. And I have not written novels, I have not written many stories, but I understand and can recognize when something is being well written and not well written, to me. And I'm of the mind that you can take any kind of plot device, how stupid it could be, and you could still spin it. Let me try this. This guy says Guts won't win because Femto is on the power level. Get Griffith to release his god status. How do you do that? You have him rebel against the God Hand. God Hand says, well, we're taking away your god status. Therefore, he recruits Guts. That's why they fight together. And that is why it goes to that ending of fighting the God Hand and rebelling, getting rid of the idea of evil. That's one way to do it with the power level. And then Guts and Griffith fight after defeating the God Hand to settle this once for all. They're on equal playing field. Griffith is still powerful. He has some powers, but he's still not Femto. And I think when people see these theories, they just assume that just happens. He just gets rid of it. And it's like, no, these people are just saying what could happen. They're just not reiterating the points to get there because of course it'll end up like a video this long. Also, yes, they could buff the shit out of Guts with the Berserk armor. We have met the guy who created it. What if before he sets out to go fight the God Hand, he says, hey, you'll need this. He gives him a kind of new version of it. He buffs it. He finds a way to temper the monster inside the armor so it doesn't control Guts as much. So that way he can use it with more senses. He doesn't have to go full Berserko sicko mode and he can actually control himself. That's one way of writing it. I understand people see a theory and they think that's kind of dumb, that wouldn't happen. You need to see the possibilities of how it could happen. That's how good writing works. Because the way I laid out the steps, and again, me even laying out the steps is something that people probably disagree with, and I understand that, but that's because I'm not writing the fucking script. I would make it a bit more subtle than just, hey, have this ability, hey, you're nerfed. That's how writing works in a nutshell. Anyway, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Let's move on. I can't see an ending without Guts dying, to be honest. Interesting. I think a lot of people feel that way just because maybe Guts has lived such a harsh life that for him to rest is kind of better. It's kind of like characters who have been around for a long time, like Solid Snake. My theory was that Griffith's tears were suggesting that the Moon Boy had restored some of his humanity. He trapped the God Hand, the Apostles, and himself in the Eclipse to let his parents and his kingdom make their own fate free of the idea of evil. I think that would happen if Moonlight Boy gets separated from Griffith in the end. By sealing away the God Hand in some void-esque way, Moon Boy is the key to do that. But he has to sacrifice himself to do it. And that becomes a choice with Casca and Griffith of like, can we let this child who we need and want in our lives go so that humanity can live free without causality, without fate, without the idea of evil? And I think that would be a really cool story choice to make because it essentially says that humanity has another chance. This child is giving humanity another chance. And for them to not respect that child's choice would be to undo everything they've fought for. If Guts doesn't die in Berserk, the ending isn't for me. I get that. I understand how some people feel like they have a lot of expectations. A lot of people seem to have expectations about Griffith dying or Guts dying, so much so that it's really just kind of ingrained in their opinion. And I think a lot of people don't actually know why they want that. No offense to Miura, and I've been a fan for years, but the story's just so dark, and I think that's the setting he's made. Either it ends with him dying somewhat alone after killing Griffith, or him dying suits the setting to me, but everyone has an opinion. And I'm excited to talk about this because this kind of will wrap up the entire theory thing. Many of the theories that I already looked at and have shown already are always centered around Guts dying or Griffith dying, specifically more Griffith dying. And let's talk about that. People try and go the route of, this is what the story is demanding, this is what I want, this is what the readers want, this is what Miura wants. It's 6 different ways to try and encapsulate this huge story, and none of us know for sure what any of them happen. People will say how sure they are, but no one will ever know, right? Let's look at Guts dying, number 1. Guts dying is not an impossibility. Some characters grow in the journey and then dying at the end of the story isn't necessarily a bad writing technique. It just works for specific characters if they don't have anything to live for. I think it doesn't work well for Guts because he does have something to live for. He has companions, he has people. Unless he's dying to protect them in the very end, then sure, like, yeah, that would make it all worthwhile. But if he doesn't, he needs something to live for, and he has those things. So him dying to me doesn't make sense. It doesn't work well with the story Berserk. And I know people are like, well, it's really dark, of course he's gonna die. I think I talked about this in the video that I made comments of. Just because it's dark, it does not mean it needs a dark ending for the sake of the theme of dark fantasy, right? And let's look at the same with Griffith. People want Griffith to die for, I think, two major reasons. Number one, they think that the story revolves around Guts killing Griffith. Ever since the beginning, ever since the Golden Age, these two characters have been intertwined basically throughout the entire story, if not visually, but also spiritually, right? They want him to die because it just makes sense to the story. Number two, people have a strong emotional reaction when it comes to Griffith. They want him to die because they despise Griffith in so many ways of what he's done. And I'm in that camp. I do despise Griffith. I look at Griffith as like many historical characters who probably didn't get their comeuppance. I look at Griffith as like a Frank from House of Cards where he needed to get his comeuppance in the end of the story. So I am in that camp. I want Griffith to get his comeuppance. But for him to die and people be very obsessed, I think people are chasing that cathartic feeling. They want that release cathartic feeling of this character dying and knowing what he did wrong and saying, fuck you. But that whole reasoning lies with the problem of the story as well. Guts spent a lot of his time of those 2 years fighting apostles looking for Griffith so he could kill him. And many people would say if he doesn't kill Griffith, it'll all be for nothing. It was all for nothing anyway. He didn't achieve anything killing those apostles. He didn't get any kind of cathartic release from it. Sure, he probably loved it, enjoyed and relished in killing the apostles, but did it fill the hole in his heart? No. Did it make him feel better? No. So for Griffith to die is essentially you're kidding yourself as the reader. You're thinking, oh, I just want him to die. I just want him to die. I just want this hole to be filled. And I think that's what Miura was trying to do, of trying to put the reader along with Guts, of having this feeling like this guy needs to die. He needs to. There's a difference between wants and needs in a story. You want Griffith to die, but what Griffith needs is his comeuppance. And it could be death. But from what I see, in my opinion, Griffith's comeuppance, and it goes along with the theories that we've talked about, is that he loses to Guts. Guts walks away, and it resembles when he first walked away from him all those years ago, showing, I know you want to be the priority in my life. You want to be the one I obsess over. But I have a life and I have a dream I want to achieve, and it doesn't involve you anymore. So you are nothing to me anymore. That to Griffith is so life-shattering and earth-shattering to an extent that he would not be able to take it. And if Griffith had lost everything, he had lost his kingdom, or he had lost everything during this battle, or even after the battle, he loses everything because he can't let go of the feeling that there's a man out there who has a dream that I'm not the center of, who I felt so close to and I feel betrayed for, but I'm too prideful to say, forgive me, or I'm sorry, or I made the wrong choice. To me, a character like that needs to understand what it is to be alone. Griffith has died. He died. He was tortured and mutilated, and he died and was reborn as Femto. To me, he died. But what's worse than death is being alone, especially with Griffith. Being alone without a dream. Being worse off than you were when you were just alone with no one to care for you and no one that you actually admired around you. Guts was alone for a long time, but he became the best version of himself when he wasn't alone. Griffith, to me, when he's alone, and still is alone when he's around people, to him to be truly alone with no one actually caring about him, or even acknowledging that he exists, is more of a comeuppance, because then he's forced to walk for eternity, or as long as he lives, realizing that my dream was for nothing because all I really wanted was what Guts has. And to me, that's the best comeuppance he can get. So to the people who love the idea of Griffith must die, I get it. I totally get it. But just think about it a bit more. That's my opinion. And I know I'm probably going to get some people who are like, Griffith did nothing wrong, Griffith should die, blah, 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 blah. That's okay. It's fun to talk about this. But there you go. Those are the Berserk ending theories. Who knows what people will come up with a year from now? I'm sure we'll be back here making another video talking about some new ones that still haven't seen. Again, if you liked the video, you should comment actually your theories, because who knows? Maybe you have a new one that no one's ever heard of before, but just don't make paragraphs. Like, it's a lot to read. Just keep them short. Or if you liked the video, be sure to give it a like or subscribe. Really helps me out. But I appreciate if you watched to the end. Thank you again for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. My name's Mugen. As always, have a good one.